When I drank alcohol, I did not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. When I drank alcohol, I comprehended the word serenity, and I knew peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, when I drank alcohol, I could see how my experience could benefit others. You knew, don't you? Oh, boy. When I drank alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity disappeared. When I drank alcohol, I lost interest in selfish things, and I gained interest in their fellows, the ladies. When I drank alcohol, self-seeking slipped away. When I drank alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life changed. I like this next one. When I drank alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. I want to tell you about that. When some years of running a bar, I never, ever met a poor man in a bar. There just isn't any poor men that ever go to saloons. Every damn one of them is on their way to riches. All they need is $5 credit until they can get going. Never a poor man in a saloon. That's the wonderful thing about saloons. We ought to keep them around. When I drank alcohol, I intuitively knew how to handle situations that used to baffle me. Isn't that wonderful? And isn't that what we were looking for when we were drinking alcohol? We were looking for all of those things. Now we have got these things, and how did we get them? It's getting rid of self-will and started using God's directions up to this point in the program. Isn't it miraculous? I no longer have to kill myself in order to get these promises. Before I'm pouring this booze and this crap in my system and slowly killing myself. These are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
You forgot the most important sentence down at the bottom. Right. When I drank alcohol, I suddenly realized that alcohol is doing for me what I could not do for myself.
Right. Now you made me forget what I was going to say.
Step 10.
Now, there was the one that used to bother me, and usually bothers most of us when we come into AA, this stupid promise here about economic insecurity will leave us. And I thought, they're crazy. What's this got to do with my economic security? Well, I found out they were right about that, and I'm not too sure how it works. It may be kind of like the fellow that had a big problem in wetting his pants. And it was so bad that every time you saw him, his pants was wet. And so somebody suggested that he'd go to a psychiatrist. And so he goes to a psychiatrist, and about a week later, 2 or 3 weeks later, they're walking down the street, and he sees this guy, and his pants are all wet. And they went up, and he says, well, I thought you were going to a psychiatrist about that. He says, I am. Well, isn't he doing you any good? He says, no, but so I no longer care. And maybe that's the way it is with the money. It's not as important as it once was. Now, one of the things that we were talking about it during the break, I have a little prayer that I have used a long, long time. It kind of fits some of these promises, I think. And it's a simple little thing, and it works so good for me, is simply, God, make me want what I've got. For so many years, I always wanted something else. I said, when my house is paid for, then I'll be happy. When I get that new car, then I'm going to be happy. When I get the new wife, that'll do it. I'll be happy then. And I got all of those things, and I wasn't happy. So I figured, if I would want what God has given me, then I can be happy. And the thing works. God, make me want what I've got. And sometimes I might want something else, and if I'm supposed to have it, it comes. I get it. My Al-Anon, she never worries about anything. I'm not too sure she has the intelligence to worry. But, where is she?
Taking a nap.
She's not here. I'm safe. She had a lot to do with my attitude about it, because I used to worry about everything, and we would want to go someplace. Maybe we were going to go for an AA weekend someplace, and I said, yeah, but where are we going to get the money? She said, oh, it'll come. And we've been married about 12 years, and every time I want to go someplace, she said, oh, it'll come. I don't know, we just keep going. Coming. I don't worry about it anymore, because you don't worry about it. Why should I? And you know, it's the darnest thing, it works. Whatever you need is always there. You know, stop and think about it. Is all of your life, everything that you have ever needed has been provided. Maybe not what you wanted, but everything you have ever needed has been provided. If it wasn't, you'd be dead. It's miraculous. Step 10. You want to start it?
Step 10 is when you read this part, I've quite often spent a lot of time reading this next paragraph. It says, Step 10, which suggests we continue to take personally and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. And for me, from the beginning, I tried to do that. I think when you come into Alcoholics Anonymous, you've probably made a tornado path bad enough that you don't need to add any fire to it. So when you come into the program, I think you should start right out trying to, write things as it goes along. We no longer have to do those things. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. And this next couple of sentences are kind of interesting to me. It says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. It doesn't say if they crop up, or maybe they'll crop up. It says when they crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. So I guess Bill knew that we were going to continue to be selfish, dishonest, resentful, and full of fear because we're human beings. And what I tell people that I sponsor is they'll come to me and they'll say, here I am, I'm into my resentments again, or I'm full of fear again. They're beating themselves down in the dungeon, and I say to them, isn't it wonderful to be human? And I think if we can keep that in mind, and I heard a fellow say something in a meeting the other night about this, and I thought this was kind of a neat thing. He said, I told my sponsor that I keep getting resentful. We were talking about the 10th step, and he said, I told my sponsor, I keep getting resentments, and every once in a while I get full of fear, and he was going on and on. And his sponsor told him, yeah, but I've watched you grow because every time you do, you catch it just a little bit sooner, you recognize it, and just a little bit sooner you do something about it. And that's how we grow. We don't wait for weeks to go by. And it tells me right here, it says, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately, not next week or next month, but immediately. Make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Have you ever found yourself, it's pretty hard to be resentful, angry, full of self-pity when you're trying to help somebody else. That's a very difficult thing to do. And when I get into self-pity or fear or anything, just about the time I do, the phone will ring and it'll be one of my pigeons and they'll have the disaster of the day and they'll want to talk about it. And by the time I hang up, I've forgotten about my problem. It's no longer important. And the next thing it says is love and tolerance of others is our code. How many here knew that AA had a code that was love and tolerance of others? And Woody's wife is a perfect example of that. She has got the most loving and tolerant attitude. I mean, if you knew Woody, you would understand what I mean. And, you often, living with an alcoholic, sometimes I think people deserve medals. I know my husband, sometimes he just deserves a medal because I've got one of the world's worst tempers that there is. And if I wasn't such a big person, I'd probably throw myself down and kick my feet once in a while. But love and tolerance is our code.
I thought you did.
Occasionally I do. And in the next sentence, I think this is a promise also. It says, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. By this time, sanity will have returned. We're now sane. Yes, sir.
We are now allowed to think again. We have reached the point that we can be trusted to think sanely. Isn't that wonderful? We're making a lot of progress. We only have to do 10 of these steps to get to the point that we're no longer thinking insanely. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. What this part that Mary just read about, we discuss them with someone immediately. Remember what we were talking about, this resentment? as soon as that resentment shows up, as soon as there's recognition of it, do something about it. And what better place to start than to discuss it with somebody else? Because the longer you bottle it up, the worse it's going to get. It grows so fast. It grows like a weed as long as we bottle it up. But when I go and talk to someone else about this resentment, I'm on my way toward getting rid of it, and I'm not going to have to go through all of those reactions.
And you know, one thing that I think is so important for me, that I was absolutely devastated, and I mean devastated, when I discovered that my sponsor was a human being. You know, we put our sponsors up there on a pedestal, and the first time I seen Woody in a meeting and he lost his temper, and he got into an argument with this guy in a meeting, and I mean, they were both making absolute fools of themselves, and I just sat there looking at him, and I said, he's not supposed to get resentful. He's not supposed to get angry. He's my sponsor, you know. And I was devastated to know that he was a human being. And he pointed out to me, he said, isn't it wonderful to be human? And I said, okay, whatever you say. But the point I'm trying to make is that recently I had that experience myself as one of my patients come to me and told me I had lost my temper one night. And she seemed me really upset. And she said, I didn't know you did that anymore. And I said, are you in for a big surprise? And it's, you know, it tells me right here in the 10th step that these things are going to happen. That doesn't mean that I get up in the morning and I set out to be resentful, full of fear. I try my best not to. But when I do get this way, I try to do something about it immediately. And as I was saying, it goes on to say, we will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. And I couldn't understand that. When I first come in, you'll hear people say, oh, I'm craving a drink. Have you ever heard somebody say that they've been around the program for a long time and they say they're craving a drink? I did that. The first year I was in the program, that first Christmas was the most miserable Christmas I thought I ever had. It was just, you know, I just knew I wasn't going to make it through without a drink. And it was pointed out to me that I was referring to the obsession. I was not having a craving. And it tells me here in the 10th step that I will seldom be interested in liquor. And that's true. Liquor is the furthest thing from my mind. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has given us, without any thought or effort on our come. It's kind of like you wake up one morning and alcohol is no longer the problem. But living is the problem, and you want to live a better life. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. Remember way back where it says that this is exactly what this book is about? How, I'm going to find it now. Wait a minute, Woody.
Chapter 4.
Thank you. Bear with me, folks. Here, and I'll find it. Okay, back on page 45 where it says lack of power, that was our dilemma. And it goes on to tell us we had to find a power by which we could live, a power greater than ourselves. And the next paragraph it says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. And by the time you get to I'm real great at holding my place here today. Thank you, buddy. That's why I'm over here. And by the time we get over here to page 85, it's telling me that the problem has been removed. I no longer have the problem. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. That is how we react as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And this next sentence is so true. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. And it's so easy for us to say, well, tonight I don't feel like going to a meeting, or I don't feel like doing this, or I don't need those meetings anymore. I know what's in that book. And you know, before you know it, those things that we were talking about that lay just below the surface, they're back. I'm being a horse's butt, is what he calls it, and I'm being restless, irritable, and discontented. Why? I'm not helping others. And when I'm not helping others, I'm not giving away what I've got. And I will not keep it if I give it away. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. Here's another prayer. How can I best serve Thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These thoughts must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the place of the will. And I couldn't understand that when it said these thoughts must go with us constantly. But when you think about it and you're out there in the everyday world and somebody might push your buttons or pull your strings, you have to learn to remember to say little prayers like, Thy will, not mine, be done.
You notice that it says that what we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I think what they're talking about here is our daily maintenance of our spiritual condition. I'm not right sure where it came from, but for a good part of AA, probably the largest part of it, refers to these last three steps as the maintenance steps. It caught on someplace and started being used. And Clarence used to tell me that these are not maintenance steps. And I have to agree with him. When I think about maintaining something, I think of an old house that every 5 years you give it a coat of paint. It doesn't really ever get any better. You just freshen it up a little bit every 5 years or so. And this is maintenance. These steps are construction steps. These are growth steps, these last three steps. I resent it when somebody refers to them as a maintenance step, and at every opportunity I make myself unpopular by an exception to it. The steps are too great. They're too important to be called simply maintenance, because it's more than maintenance. It may have come from the fact that in the 10th step, what they're talking about, there's a big word in that step called continue. Continue. Probably one of the most beautiful words in their program. Continue with what I have learned. Am I practicing the previous 9 steps, what I've learned about these 9 steps in my program every day? And am I using them all through the day and so on and so forth? Well, you know, if I do that, can I help but grow? I'm not going to just maintain a status quo or something like that. I'm going to grow, and I'm going to grow in spiritual understanding, particularly in the 11th step. It's got to be growth. Construction's growth steps, I think, are so much better. The 12th step is the same thing. They're two beautiful steps for that. They talk about this daily maintenance of our spiritual condition. We can exercise our willpower along these lines. All we wish is the proper use of the will. Near the bottom of page 85, there's much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all power and knowledge. If we have carefully followed directions, here we go again, a book of directions. If we've carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense a flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth strength. But we must go further. See what it says? Go further. We must grow some more. We've got to build some more into our life, because there's a lot more there. It's, you know, this building kind of reminds me of what people say about the mountain. Why did you climb the mountain? Because it's there. And it's what it is here in these last steps. There's so much happiness to be derived from what these steps have to offer, that how can we help but go ahead and take them and grow in the steps. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on a matter of power, of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. I never will forget one time when I was still drinking and I had this little saloon, and I had a morning habit of going out and embracing the toilet stool and look for the serial number that's down in the bottom of it. And one time I had been out there talking to this toilet stool, and I came back into the tavern, and one old boy from Georgia says, Woody, said, you're about the most religious person I ever saw in my life. I said, what the hell you mean religious? And he says, I heard you out there, and you saying, oh, Lordy, oh, Lordy. And that's about the size of it, you know. And that was about the extent of my 11th step in those days. And, in the 11th step, as we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Once again, it asks, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Mary was talking about sponsors being human and pigeons being human and what have you. It's so true. We're not going to ever get over all these things. Nobody's going to reach perfection. If you do, we got a halo for you somewhere. Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once, especially a resentment? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others? What we could pack into the stream of life? We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, and morbid reflections. I do this to this pigeon because she is the best doom and gloom woman that I have ever seen in my life. She says it's an old Italian custom. But it sure does make her unhappy. It is so easy to slip into that, isn't it? To see the worst. We hear so much doom and gloom. It's the end of the world. And, oh, God. You know, the world's getting better. Just like AA. You hear so many times, boy, AA is going to hell in a bucket. AA ain't going to hell in a bucket. It's better now than it's ever been. There's some things happening in AA I'm not real fond of, and there's some things that's happening in AA that I think are great. And I think AA is better than it's ever been, and it's getting better all the time. You know, back when all of those old fogies, when I came into AA, the average age around 55 to 60, and you couldn't get them to look at a big book. They know what it was. You know what got people started looking at big book is where younger people starting to come into AA because of more information. The younger people that's coming to AA today know how to study. They know how to use the tools to study with. Most of them have had more education, have had the advantage of better schools, going to school and that sort of thing. And I noticed it's the younger people who are interested in the book. They're saying, let's see the book, let's see what it says. And they're anxious. And I think those of us who are interested in the big book are growing by leaps and bounds. Marco tells me that there's about 82 of us here at this section of the Big Book Weekend. I don't think we've had over about 45 at any other. Down at Camp Florida, it's growing the same way. And I don't know, in your area, in our area, big book groups seem to be starting every day. Almost every day somebody is starting some kind of a big book group. And it's wonderful, and I think a lot of it has to do with the younger people that are coming to AA today. I found one thing: if somebody has been around AA for 25 years and they've never been in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's not much point in offering it to them, because they're going to say, I'm doing just fine. Who the hell needs it? And I say, that's right, I guess you don't. And 9 times out of 10, they're pretty miserable individuals. I don't care about talking to them anyway. You know, this program is great. This is a happy program. This offers us everything. We've been so miserable, and we've been down the road, and we've had bad experiences, and here we're offered something on a silver platter that's so good if we just follow the directions that's offered in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I sound like I'm preaching about it, you're right, I am, because I think it's important. Said, after making our review of the day, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Now, here's the advantage of these other steps, and this 10th and 11th step, that when we review our day here, the 11th step in particular, when we review this day, say, well, I got that resentment at that old boy. So what am I going to do about that resentment? Well, you do what you learned in the first 9 steps of this program. You do exactly the same thing you did in the 4th step. If necessary, write it down again. Nothing wrong with writing it down again. Resentment, why, and how are you reacting to it? And the first thing you know, you're going to say, hey, that's the same way I reacted to all that junk when I was drunk. And here I am doing the same thing again. I'm going to have to straighten this out, so maybe go talk to somebody. But the time to do something about it is now. Do you notice how they keep stressing that? I always think of that as, don't let it go any further. Recognize and take care of it. Then they tell us on awakening, let us think of the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest and self-seeking motives. A little further on, in thinking about our day, we may face the indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come. Tried this for a while. What used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times.
We may pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. I've run up on a few people that say they claim that God found some parking places, changes traffic lights. I even hit one that said he went into a restaurant and there was a fight going on and he stopped a chair in midair and it settled to the floor. Almost unbelievable. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. And we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. You know, meditation sometimes has a hard time of it in AA. There's some strange things in human nature that I'm at loss to really understand. I don't know how many of you have tried to just sit and maybe have beautiful thoughts for 30 seconds. I've tried to have maybe a beautiful flower, a new rose with a dewdrop on it and everything, and just sit and say, I'm not going to have any negative thoughts whatsoever. I'm only going to think about the beauty of this rose that has made and have beautiful, clean thoughts for at least the next 30 seconds. And after about 15 seconds, I'll say, I got to go call old Joe. You know, I can't hold that beautiful thought for 30 seconds about that rose. But I'll guarantee you that with no effort whatsoever, I can go around full of anger, resentment, self-pity, jealousy, envy, anything else for 3 weeks without any effort whatsoever. Now, why is it so hard to maintain a beautiful thought for just 30 seconds? They tell me that the Eastern religions spend a lifetime trying to learn to have only beautiful thoughts. And I can see why. It must not be a part of human nature. We always think of the other things. Well, maybe it's because we get so busy. I think there's value in meditation. I went through a divorce after 12 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a wife for 23 years that told me for breakfast one morning that she'd found someone else. I thought I was going to die, but the worst thing that happened is I was unable to meditate. I was unable to pray. And it damn near killed me. I didn't drink, anything like that, but I couldn't get over the thing, the turmoil, the trauma of the situation, and I couldn't get over it. The worst thing that happened, I think, is I stopped spending a few minutes each day with just me and God, which I think is so important. But actually it took a couple of years to do that, and I must be eternally grateful to Jenny. Jenny and I got together through a strange set of circumstances, and when I kid her a lot about a lot of things, her Al-Anon and her attitude, but she has something else that she gets on me. And I was so miserable during this period, and things wasn't going well, and I can remember one day I leaned back in a chair and I looked up and I said, God, please send me somebody that I can love, that will love me. And that night I called Jenny, and it took 3 days to get her off of the phone long enough to ask her if she'd have dinner with me. And she had dinner with me, and eventually we got married. And now, if I complain about anything she does, she says, don't forget you prayed for me. But, you know, isn't this a case of perhaps I might have gotten over my turmoil if I had prayed sooner? I don't know. But it seems like when I prayed, God did for me what I didn't know how to do myself. And it worked out pretty good. We have a very happy life. The wife I was married to before was not interested in Al-Anon at all. She didn't go to Al-Anon. Jenny has been in Al-Anon longer than I've been in AA. I want to tell you there's a big difference. It makes a big difference if they're going to Al-Anon. I am so grateful that she goes. She has her own program, and I wouldn't dare interfere with it. I'm frightened, that and the other, but she knew I'm not going to interfere. And I don't interfere with their pigeons either. But it's a whole new way of living. This 11th step, things start to happen to us automatically. You don't have to put much effort into it. We have practiced these things, and good things start to happen. Good life comes along. In a way, it's almost unbelievable the way that things work themselves out. Just when everything looks the darkest, it starts to come in from someplace. But I think it's so important, so very, very important. Never get too busy to spend at least a couple of minutes with just you and God. If you do, I think we're going to get in trouble. If we don't do that, I think we stop growing. if we don't do that. I'm sure that I did. It's the most valuable 2, 3, or 4, 5 minutes that you could possibly use by the day. Isn't it amazing how many people get too damn busy to do it? You wonder how many people are doing it. And it's worth so much to it. Yes, ma'am?
This 11th step has been so important to me. I always make sure that I get up a few minutes early in the morning so that I can take a few minutes, so that I got the dog laying next to me, and the dog knows every morning when I get up I'm going to go sit in my quiet place, and he always comes and sits next to me. And it's the darnest thing, he won't move, just sit there very quietly until I'm finished. But quite a while back, I went through a very difficult time, and you know, all of us alcoholics, we're real good actresses and actors, and I was real upset tonight, and so I went and I said, I'm going to bed. I got a box of tissues, and I was going to go cry myself to sleep. I had made up my mind about that. This was the end. So I went into bed and I laid down, and I said, now before I go cry myself to sleep, I got to say my evening prayers. You can't cry yourself to sleep unless you do that. So I laid down and I thanked God for not letting me pick up a drink, and then I said, if you're there, please help me. I can't stand feeling like this. And it was the weirdest feeling, but I suddenly felt as though this weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and the next thing I knew, I woke up and it was morning. And I obviously didn't cry myself to sleep, but the point that I'm trying to get to is that even sometimes if we can't talk to God the way we think we should, or that we think that we're not doing it right, is what I'm trying to say, is if you just take a few minutes, sometimes just taking that few minutes, what I tell the people I sponsor is, if all you can say is thank you, then damn it, say thank you. If you can't clear your mind like what he was talking about, don't try, but at least say thank you for not letting me pick up a drink today, or say please don't let me pick one up, whatever. Keep it pretty simple. It tells me down at the bottom of page 87, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much, much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. I don't know about you, but I get real wore out trying to get everybody to do what I want them to do. I mean, if you ever think about it, you get up and you're going to live this spiritual life, and the first thing you do is you get in the car to go to work, and the guy in front of you isn't moving fast enough. So you start blowing your horn, as Woody says, the air turns blue inside the car, and you're off to a great day. You're just off to a great day. And it's amazing if you can just relax, take it easy. And it's not easy to do all the time, but when you do, your day goes so much nicer, and you're not tired, and you're not wore out. And it tells me right here, it says it works, it really does. In this next sentence, we alcoholics are undisciplined. Isn't that, I don't know about any of you, but I have to every day practice at not losing my temper, and not being angry, all the things, practice these principles in all my affairs, and it really does take a lot of practice. Go ahead, Daphne.
That ends the session for today. I think we're going to have a tonight. We're going to have a